Hey guys, what's going on? This is AngryLarry, and I'm here with my review and analysis for the WWE Live Special that was Roadblock. It aired on Saturday, March 12th, and today is March 15th when I'm getting around to record this. And the reason why I'm recording this so late is I wanted to watch Raw first just to see if any of the results of this pseudo pay-per-view made any sense to me. And basically, well, it didn't, and let me explain. First, let's take a look at the results of these matches, my thoughts, initial thoughts at the pay-per-view, or as the pay-per-view was airing about the matches, and then we'll get into the Raw fallout stemming from these matches after I conclude with the results of the pay-per-view. First match was the New Day defeating the League of Nations, who was without Alberto Del Rio and Rusev. Now, this made New Day still have the numbers game 3-2, and because of that, they did eventually win the match. Interesting to note, and the Duke has been talking about this on the Game and Wrestling Connection podcast we've been doing. New Day is becoming a face, and the seed was planted back in Fastlane when they were palling around with Edge and Christian. But it's interesting to note that the Monday before Roadblock, they faced what was then the face team of Y2AJ. And then they were absent on SmackDown only to be in this match and JBL going full heel on them on the announcing side of things. That's a little odd, isn't it? I mean, nothing really caused the face change except for making fun of the League of Nations on social media and initially back on Fastlane. So I don't know why JBL and this was the time to start hating on them, for JBL to start hating on them as being quote unquote faces. They were certainly treated like them, and they still had the outside interference that really caused them to win the match anyway. So they really didn't do anything different. It's just now they're fighting the League of Nations, and that turned them huge baby faces. As far as the announce team goes, I mean, the fans have always liked them, don't get me wrong. It's just a little weird that this was the spot where they just flipped the coin. And most of what doesn't make sense about this pay-per-view comes to light, or doesn't come to light, on Raw, so we'll talk more about this in a little while. The second match was the first unannounced match at the pay-per-view. Chris Jericho defeated Jack Swagger, and nothing really says pay-per-view match quality like Jack Swagger, am I right? One of the best parts of this pay-per-view, though, was Jericho's promo on the crowd. It really wasn't scripted to be hysterical, but it was hysterical. I loved it. I love when the heels go off on the fans and treat them, like the humanoids that they are. But I just don't understand why they're trying to pump AJ Styles down the fans' throats like they're robots. It happened on SmackDown. It happened on Roadblock. Basically, Chris Jericho is trying to get the fans to chant for AJ Styles, and the fans are not chanting for anything, or they're chanting for Y2J. It doesn't make sense. Though, the one thing that gets the fans chanting for AJ Styles, though? AJ Styles being in the ring and wrestling. And this was the final obstacle, as they advertise it, on the road to WrestleMania. You're setting up yet another AJ Styles versus Jericho match, and AJ Styles was nowhere to be found. So that's interesting. The third match was the announced NXT Tag Team Title match. The Revival, Dash and Dawson versus Enzo and Big Cass, a rematch from their match at the NXT TakeOver London special in December. Now, did anyone find this annoying that Michael Cole was calling Dawson Scott pretty much the entire match, or that he seemed to have legitimate names of moves that they really didn't have in NXT programming? It just seemed on both sides of the fence he was calling names of moves that I've never heard before. It was awkward. I don't understand why they just didn't have Tom Phillips and Corey Graves there. and just had a secondary announced team just for this match to give it an NXT feel. The match didn't need the NXT, like the announcers, to have that NXT feel. It was still a good match, but with the Revival winning yet again, it remains to be seen what the real plans with Enzo and Cass are here, because they've lost 2 tag team title matches in a row. It could lead to a 3rd tag team title match at NXT TakeOver Dallas, maybe even titles versus leaving NXT. The rumor being that Enzo and Big Cass are main roster bound, and 2 title matches in a row doesn't really graduate you to the main roster in my mind. So it almost seems definite that they have to have these tag team titles around their waist first. Maybe some sort of gimmick is set up for the Revival, for the TakeOver Dallas show, and then they finally win, and maybe they're not main roster bound the next day after WrestleMania, but soon thereafter, hot-shotting the title. Maybe. We'll see. NXT airs later on today as I'm recording this. So, tomorrow as I'm recording this. So we'll see what happens. But a pretty good match. The second unannounced match was Charlotte defeating Natalya. And being in Canada, I don't know why I really didn't expect Natalya to be there. I mean, I kind of put her in the GNWC prediction show. I put her in an unannounced match. But it wasn't because they were in Canada. It was because there was no Divas representation on announced matches yet. So I just threw her in a match. But it's surprisingly easy to goad Charlotte into a title match, isn't it? I mean, that's certainly not becoming of a true heel, but rather of like somebody who takes on all challenges. And because of this, and basically my reaction to almost every match, I'm really starting to think that I really don't know what the definitions of heels and faces are anymore in 2016. And not to go all total Divas promo on this recap, but if you haven't already subscribed to the Game and Wrestling Connection channel, GNWC Official on YouTube, please do. We're going to have more discussion on what heels, faces, and turning either heel or face means in 2016 on the weekly recording that we'll do this week after SmackDown. We'll also have more thoughts and comments, especially from the Duke, on Roadblock, so it's definitely going to be worth checking out. I recommend subscribing and listening to it if you can. But back on track, for what it's worth, I thought this match was really good, and I find myself saying that a lot lately about Divas matches. I don't really necessarily agree with the storylines that they're putting going in and out of every single match. But the wrestling has been pretty good, and it also makes a strong case for Natalya to really be there in a top 4 in the division and not just have it be the top 3. But Natalya has always been the whipping girl of the division, the whole Jill of all trades. If we need a match, let's go to Natalya. If we need Natalya to babysit new girls, we'll have her do that. If we need Natalya to train somebody, we'll have her do that. I mean, certainly maybe it's nice to have that job, to always be needed. But as a wrestler, you kind of want to wrestle. And I feel like Natalya's been taken advantage of. And then comes on TV with her chances and is absolutely spectacular. And then you look down the line and there's, again, no place for her. So we were talking about Naomi being the whole poster child of the divisions, the Diva division, being the odd person out. I mean, it's really Natalya. And again, I'll have more on this later as well, because something also interesting happened at her expense on Raw. So we'll get to that. The next match was Brock Lesnar defeating Luke Harper and Bray Wyatt. Now, I totally missed where this was announced as a handicap match. Maybe it was just before the match aired. But in the handicap match, Bray never tagged in. So it was basically Brock Lesnar defeated Luke Harper. And if anybody pays attention to live WWE events, the same exact scenario happened the day before on a WWE house show. Exactly the same. Bray never tagged in, never got touched. We got a carbon copy of a WWE live event match on a pay-per-view, or a so-called pay-per-view, and something they took time to promote as a legitimate live special pay-per-view alternative, whatever you want to call it. We also got no Eric Rowan and no Braun Strowman in this match. It was just straight up Brock Lesnar defeating Luke Harper, who still looked good in the loss. And he's still one of my favorite workers in the WWE who doesn't get enough credit or anything going. No, he has no steam towards him because the Wyatts lose all the time, let's face it. And here's another loss and another Brock win. It just never made sense, this match. And then changing it to a handicap match, which then wasn't a handicap match, doesn't make sense either. The last unannounced match of the evening was Sami Zayn defeating Stardust. And it's good to see Sami Zayn on the main roster. You can tell the guy puts a lot of effort and is just a character in himself. I mean, he's very entertaining. The fans just never seem to care about this match. Nothing got over. And it's really a shame because Sami Zayn, like I said, he just puts it all out there. And Stardust is pretty good. I mean, people really hated on Cody Rhodes, but Stardust has been good. I mean, he's like very good. He's wacky. He's putting a lot into his character outside of the ring as well. If you haven't seen the Edge and Christian show, I mean, it shows there as well. He's very good. And he's like the Natalya of the men's division. He just doesn't really even seem to matter. We'll just plug him in where we can. And it's a shame. I'd like to see, post-WrestleMania, I'd like to see Stardust have a more prominent role. But for what it's worth, I mean, it was an okay match. It's just it had no fan reaction. And just like before, when AJ Styles was nowhere to be found during Chris Jericho's promo and match, Kevin Owens was also not found here. So it's really odd that they're really promoting this to be like the final stop to WrestleMania, and everything they have going towards WrestleMania like just never really materialized at this show. And we'll touch on that in a little bit, because the last match of the pay-per-view, or whatever you want to call it, I know the Duke has a lot of opinions on what to actually call specials like these. Triple H defeated and retained the heavyweight championship against Dean Ambrose in a match that featured a false finish of Dean Ambrose clean pinning Triple H, but Dean's foot was slightly, maybe a toe, under the rope as he pinned Triple H. So after counting 3, the referee restarted the match, I guess, or basically just called it a no decision, a non-pin. And then the match went on for a little longer, and Triple H eventually won. I hate false finishes. I really do. It's such a lazy way, to me, my opinion. It's necessary. It's needed. I get it. It's such a lazy way to really promote somebody as being legitimate. And this false finish proved that Dean Ambrose can beat Triple H and is a main event talent. But I think the fans knew that already. The fans treat Dean Ambrose like he's main event talent. I don't think you needed a false finish over Triple H to solidify that. What you needed was Dean Ambrose to beat Triple H here for the title. And that would have changed the game. No pun intended. And I'll tell you why in a bit. I love the ending of this match, though, false finish aside, where Dean Ambrose is doing that thing where you get in the ring just before the 10 count and basically slid into the ring right into a pedigree. I thought that finish was pretty legit. I don't think I've ever seen something like that before, where somebody's been on the verge of counting out, got into the ring just in time, and rolled right into a finishing move. I thought it was spectacular, but it didn't save the pay-per-view. Now, before we get on to really analyzing and grading Roadblock and the non-pay-per-view live concept, let's take a look at what happened on Raw itself. Now, the New Day had a rematch with the League of Nations, but this time the League of Nations being Del Rio and Rusev as opposed to Sheamus and King Barrett. This was a better match to justify New Day being faces, as after they won, the League of Nations just flat out destroyed them. I mean, destroyed them. Maybe getting beat down doesn't justify being considered face or face turn or whatever, but that act finally legitimized the League of Nations as being a credible stable and heels, and that's something they've never had, except for the initial scratch of the surface that they had with Roman Reigns when they were first formed. They've never had that stable feel to them. They never had that we are the heel team to beat feel. And now New Day can get legit sympathy from the fans, and going forward can be seen as faces or anti-heels because the true heels destroyed them. That's kind of what the booking needs in many ways to justify things like this, not just flash in the pan. Well, we want League of Nations to be a heel, so we'll just announce that New Day, we'll just treat New Day as being face. It was the better match too, honestly. Better ending, better match, better participants of the League of Nations, better tag team chemistry, so to speak. I always liked Del Rio and Rusev being the tag team of the division, and it was certainly good, and again, better than Roadblock. When Jericho came out on Raw, he again trashed the crowd and lost by disqualification against Neville, saying that the fans drove him to it. He drove him to the disqualification and the beatdown of Neville. AJ Styles finally had enough, came out to confront Jericho, and we basically got one move of offense, the phenomenal forearm, and then the attack stopped. I mean, there are many weeks left before WrestleMania to further this feud, and it may have been cut short to protect another altercation later in the show, but one offensive strike after a betrayal and 2 promos cut against you is pretty weak, and nothing to sell me on for a 4th AJ versus Jericho match, certainly. And even if they have a confrontation at SmackDown, it's not like I'm on the edge of my seat saying, oh, I can't wait to see what they do now after what they did on Raw. It really just doesn't do it for me. They already had their rubber match. I really wish they stayed a tag team or did something else until after WrestleMania is basically my gripe about that. And I'm pretty salty. Salty, so to speak. Not that I'm not enjoying wrestling right now. I do like wrestling. I enjoyed Raw. For what it's worth, I enjoyed Roadblock for being just what it was. But because of the way Roadblock was, I kind of really wish other things weren't. It's basically the way I can describe it. Now, unless I missed something again, the only thing related to the Divas title was Charlotte cutting a promo that there will be a promo on SmackDown where Charlotte confronts Becky and Sasha. And this came as an afterthought of the real focus of the Divas on Raw, which was Brie versus Lana. Yes, Lana, who's never wrestled a match in the company, took precedent over the title. Mentions of Total Divas and Paige's relationship troubles took precedent over the Divas title. Everything not related to the Divas title gets more time than the Divas title. It just feels that way. It really does. The wrestlers in the division don't matter. The faces of the company that are on a show on another network, on another time, on another day, are getting the face time. And if Lana beats Paige, even with Team Bad's help in her first match, I will be really upset. I mean, at that point in time, it's pretty much rip Paige, isn't it? Because really, what has she done? Except now get Lana over. But because of social media, we know that Brie and Paige have WrestleMania gear. So it's probably more likely we'll get a tag or a 6-diva tag match, Team Bad and Lana versus Brie and Paige, or Brie, Paige, and Alicia at WrestleMania. And at that point in time, it's Rip Natalya, isn't it? Because 9 of the 10 divas will be involved in a match. And Natalya is the only one not involved in a WrestleMania match. Unless they find a way to work her into the the Divas title match, that is poor. That is bad. That is ridiculous. There's no way, if you're going to put every diva on the roster, that you exclude Natalya. There's none. There's nothing that she has done in the last how many years in the company that would justify leaving her off the biggest show in the entire world. None. But moving on, do you know who was also absent from Monday Night Raw? The Wyatt family. Brock Lesnar, or more so Paul Heyman, also no-sold the Wyatts and the match from a few days ago to put the focus back on the Dean Ambrose no-holds-barred match at WrestleMania. Dean Ambrose basically also no-sold the Triple H match at the time Brock Lesnar came out, except for the very short introduction to his speech about almost winning and being that close. But when Brock arrived, it was almost like that match never happened, even from every standpoint for the rest of the show. It was like retconned or non-retcon, non-canon, whatever the term is that was just ripped from history. It's almost like it never exists or existed. And where's the payoff for Bray never getting in the ring? Are we setting up feuds past WrestleMania? On the road to WrestleMania? How does that make sense? Where is the aggressive Brock Lesnar being pissed off for never getting his hands on Bray Wyatt? And is that a way to protect Bray Wyatt by putting him in a big match, changing it to a handicap match, and then never tagging in and disappearing? Why was it a match in the first place then? And why wasn't it Brock versus the Social Outcasts, where the fans could have really felt like they got their money's worth, where Brock just destroyed 4 people at one time? It's reasons why, like this, why Roadblock should have just been retroactively named Slight Detour. Because nothing changed. Our focus was diverted away for a few days, but we're back on the same road, the same main road, the same linear path we were always on since Royal Rumble. Now, Kevin Owens made an appearance on Raw to interject himself in a match between Sami Zayn and The Miz, where he was initially in the broadcast booth. As he went after Sami Zayn, The Miz attacked Kevin Owens in the back. Now, it makes a little bit of sense for this to happen because The Miz was left high and dry by Owens on SmackDown. But really, still, The Miz is always the third wheel in feuds through tag team matches or Miz TV interruptions, whatever it is. The Miz is always that outside catalyst in feuds. And I just don't know where the payoff ever has been for this. Is this now his shtick? Is it a rib to The Miz from booking? Who knows? But maybe my fantasy booking scenario of all wrestling matches being multi-man matches is actually happening, with The Miz being inserted into the Intercontinental title picture, because it seemed like it was just going to be Zayn and Owens at WrestleMania. So, I mean, who knows? It's still 3 weeks away, or two weeks away from WrestleMania, so things can pretty much define themselves within these weeks. It's too early to say, like, this match is supposed to happen, but just the feeling of it was the one-on-one match, Zayn versus Owens. And now you have Miz interjecting himself, who's also been in a feud with Ziggler, and Ziggler had a main spot on Raw as well, and we'll talk more about that on the GNWC weekly show. We'll just stick to Roadblock relevant stuff on this recap. Now, that was pretty much it for Raw regarding SmackDown. Except, again, the initial words of Dean Ambrose promo mentioning the Triple H match. The path to WrestleMania is back on track and unaltered because Roman Reigns attacked Triple H at the beginning of the 3rd hour on Raw. Fans could pretty much care less that this happened. He was pretty much booed for the most part. Only in certain spots when Roman was on the offense did they get crowd reactions. That's because, a table was almost involved and the backstage stuff getting pretty crazy with objects and stuff. All of Roman's basic attacks, punches and kicks or knees or whatever, were met with boos, and this solidifies the fact that Roadblock needed to be a change, needed to alter the path to WrestleMania, the road to WrestleMania. Because we're back to the same match, and there's no way that this doesn't cause the fans to react in a negative way on social media, to voice their opinions. Triple H either wins and the fans go, oh, same old Triple H, always putting himself in the spots where he wins. Or Roman Reigns wins and the fans don't want to see that, and they even interject themselves at, louder than if Triple H would have won. Something needed to happen, but there's a couple weeks left of WrestleMania. Hard for me to imagine things will change, but I guess you never know. But saying you never know is really putting yourself in a hopeful spot to be let down. So with everything said and done, we'll talk more about this stuff I didn't mention from Raw on the GNWC Weekly Show. Ziggler's spot, the McMahon's Undertaker confrontation, and also you have the Duke's take on Roadblock and Raw as well. But let's assess Roadblock for a second. And basically it leads me to say, what's the point? No titles changed hands. No matches took place that added anything to their respective feuds. No feuds were made. Wrestlers in certain feuds weren't even on the card. There were not any mind-blowing matches. And to top it all off, it was not like this was even a cash grab. WWE Network subscribers didn't stay subscribed just for this event. New subscribers got this for free, along with a bunch of other shows this month, live specials. And it certainly didn't make any new subscriber want to stay subscribed after the trial runs out. It does nothing for the anticipation of other non-pay-per-view live specials being broadcasted either. There was a huge opportunity here to say that anything can happen in the WWE. Expect the unexpected. And create a feeling that you should never miss a WWE live event. But really you can. Especially between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. It was a televised house show, and it was booked and treated as such. The only difference were a few weeks of promos and segments on Raw and SmackDown that inevitably wasted our time to eventually get to this waste of our time. It could really be summed up by saying, wouldn't you have rather seen matches that were Ziggler and the Usos versus the Dudley Boys and Miz, Rusev versus Sin Cara, Neville and Damian Sandow versus the Social Outcasts, Ryback versus Tyler Breeze, Kalisto versus Del Rio, Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks versus Naomi and Tamina, Big Show and Kane versus Strowman and Eric Rowan, or a 30-minute Iron Man match, Kevin Owens versus AJ Styles. Would you have rather seen that? Because those matches happened in Atlantic City, New Jersey, on the same day. It's the reason why we never saw Styles, Owens, Rusev, Del Rio, Rowan, or Strowman get involved or be in their respective corners. It's also why Roadblock gets a D-. And that's my take on WWE's Roadblock live televised house show. Do you agree? Disagree? Have another opinion? Please let me know in the comments, and also consider giving this video a like, subscribing to my channel, and checking out the GNWC Weekly podcast in the link below. Also, make sure to check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/AngryLarry, and Twitter, @LarryIsAngry. I will see you guys with more gameplay videos soon, and over on the GNWC official channel for a weekly broadcast later on in the week. But for now, I need you all to do me a favor and get off my computer. Steve Blackman.